Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. This is Friday, August 31st. It was a really good trading day. It was a trading range day for the most part, but the range was much wider today than what we've historically had. And I just talked about it yesterday that a lot of times these kind of days are rather quiet. These holiday, Friday's going into holidays, and you still could say it was kind of quiet today because there wasn't a really big trend, but there was a lot of good movement. And the range, as you can see, was from about 1397 to really 1412. So that's a fairly large range, and even though we were chopping around late in the afternoon here, the moves were still really good. So it was a good trading day. That's the way I would describe it. I didn't take my first trade to I was late getting here this morning. I almost didn't come in today. I'm glad I did. The first trade I took was this trade right here, and then I took this trade, and on these two trades I hit my trading goal for the day. So there were two. I mean, this was a really good trade right here. Some quick, fast money, and on both of these trades there was a nice runner, and I'll explain the trades, how I entered both of them in a moment. But let's talk about the trades. Let's just start. You can see, and if you really, all you had to do to find the lows, these were the lows from yesterday and the overnight, and that turned out to be the lows of the day. And then this was the high of the overnight, and that turned out to be the high of the day. So it was real simple to find the highs and lows. I tell you to always start in these areas, and that's generally where you're going to get your best start for your highs and your lows. And you might have started there, but you should have moved this up to right here once we got made this low. And we never really tested that again, so we don't know how strong that may be. But my guess is you can see we bounced there all across here, so we'll probably bounce there again next time we come back. Even if it's only temporary, we'll probably get a good bounce there. So let's talk about the first trade. This was right at the open. We had this nice move down, then a two-legged, a nice measured two moves up, and then a chance to short. And then you really should have had this trend line off those first couple of bars right there. And so you also had the trend line. That was a nice little short right there. Then you had another second entry short right here. This one was a little, probably a little more difficult to see, but it's still a two-legged correction. It's still a second entry short. Here's your new low, your pullback, your first entry, your pullback, your second entry. So it's a nice second entry short. Prices didn't really get back to the trend line or even the EMA, but so it was a little bit leery, and if I'd have been sitting here, I would have been really questioning, should I take this trade since we weren't back to since we didn't really make it back to the EMA or the trend line. But let me show you what would have been my deciding factor. I would have come up here and I would have looked at this first two swings as a possible leg, and then I would have come over here and measured it, and you would have got a target to down here. We didn't get there because we couldn't get through this support, and then we bounced really quickly. But I would have been thinking about that, and you had to be thinking that we were probably going to come test this, since we were moving down so strongly that we were probably going to come test this. Whether or not I would have waited until prices came back, if you did, you missed the trade. So if you missed this one, you can't beat yourself up. Just sometimes prices are weaker or stronger than you expect them to be, and in this case they were pretty weak, and we got a nice little move down. But this was what I was waiting on. When I came in, we were somewhere right in, I'm trying to remember where we were at. This had already passed because I didn't take it. So I think we were somewhere starting to break down right in here. But what I did was I got to looking down here and thinking, okay, if we come down here and get a setup, then I definitely want to go long, and I'll show you this. Let me back out a little more. And what I did, when we made this double, when we got all this overlap and broke lower and made these two double bottoms right there, I just dropped a little, just show you I dropped a buy limit order in. It's not going to let me. because the market's closed this late in the afternoon on Friday. But anyway, I dropped a limit order right there, and prices took one tick lower, ticked me into the trade, and then turned up. And what I was looking for was, this is your overlap way away from the EMA. EMA was probably back up here at the time, and we had a strong support across there. You can see that we'd bounce there, and so I was just expecting a scalp at the very least, maybe nothing more. And you can see I got in, so I got long at 97 and 97.50, I think it is, and it just took off. So this was an easy trade, and my runner just, you know, kept going, and I exited up here in this part. And there actually was a trade coming back, the same thing as down here. Here's your overlap way away from the EMA, then you break higher and you fail. So you could have shorted there, but that's not a high probability trade, but it was a good short. I didn't take it because I was still long, and so I was busy thinking about, should I exit my long, and I wasn't thinking about getting short right there. And then we had a pullback to the EMA. It went a little further, so it was a little scary. You know, we didn't really have a trend line in place yet. You actually had a short-term trend line up through here, but that's way too steep. But by the time this second entry set up right in here, you got too many overlapping bars. So what I decided to do was, hey, I'm just going to sit tight and wait and see what happens. Instead of trying to force a trade in here, when we made this trap, I thought this was going to be we really had a failed second entry long, and this turned into, this is really a failed second entry short is what it is. So by just sitting tight and not doing anything, I got long again right here, and this was a great setup. And let me show you this. Let me try to back out a little more so you can see it. And your chart may look a little bit differently, but your pattern should look the same. But here's your first entry long, and then here's your second entry long, and it looked like it was going to fail. So I guarantee you a lot of shorts got trapped in right here thinking they'd got a trap. But you got to remember, this is probably the first break of a trend line, and we're probably going to test this high right here, and we haven't been able to do that yet. And so when we failed again and turned up, this was a great place to get long. Did I know if we would go all the way that high? No, but you got to figure you're going to test this high, and there's plenty of room to scalp out there. And this was another great move that just kept going, and runners were easily safe. So on these two trades alone, I met my trading goal for the day. And I just called it. I was going to quit early today, and I was able to easily do that. And let's just go ahead and talk about the other trades though. Then you had a nice short here. You had this matching high across here. This was your strong resistance area, and then you went into this little range. And when we ticked higher and turned back down again, this is a failed second entry long too. But you're coming out of all this congestion, and you're coming off a double top. You got to figure you're going to at least get another leg like this, and you can kind of see what happened. That's what most people were probably looking at, because there's leg one, and then you can see there was a nice measured leg two, but then prices broke on down and came on back. But let me show you this. Here's where we broke higher right here, and we never, look how prices never pulled back and tested that. And that's very, very rare. The prices are going to continue on without coming back, and that's what this move was for the most part, was prices coming back to test this. And you can see that right there. And then you should have been able to get a trend line off those two swings. And then we pulled, actually before that there was a two-legged correction after this big move down, and I really thought we were coming down here. So this was another easy trade. It only turned out to be good for a scalp, and any runners, if you didn't exit them down here in all this overlap, or when it started to pull back, then you gave it all, then you didn't get anything on your runners. But then you got a nice measured two legs. There's leg one, and then there's leg two. And what I always say, a two-legged pullback to the EMA or the trend line, and here's your trend line on this move coming down. It's usually always a great setup, and look how far away from the EMA you are. You got a couple of overlapping bars that broke higher, just like back over here and just like right here. And then you get your, so you're thinking of pullback at least to the EMA, plenty of room to scalp out, but it went much further. And you know, you might have gotten a couple of extra points out of them. By that time, it was too late. There's some other setups in here. This was another good short, but it's just way too late in the day on a Friday. You don't want to get trapped in a trade like that. And so that was pretty much it for today. And hopefully you can see, you know, I used my trend lines. Then your trend line going up, and then your trend line coming down, and your best setups are always going to be somewhere near those trend lines. And again, you know, you might have been thinking trying to get short here, but you got to remember you just came off support, and we really never had a setup. So look at all the overlap. We're all back above the EMA, just no setup right there. And but look how this one did. It ran up here, made a little doji, and then there's no overlap. It sells off quickly. Well, when you start to see this overlap, and notice how there's no overlap here. Now, there was a bunch of overlap here, but we had this failed second entry short. And if you went to a bigger picture, there wouldn't have been multiple lower moves. This would have been just a basic failed second entry short that reversed and trapped everybody on the short side, and it went long, then it went higher again. So